Finally, for any company or organization that is making something, it is important that they get as close to 100% as possible of producing what they would like. So in the real world, the calculated amount of product rarely is achieved in a lab setting. So even if we had the best of our abilities, it is very rare that we actually produce 100% of what we expected. So if our percent yield is positive, this means that we have produced less than expected. And I should say positive All right, so if the percent yield is less than 100%, we have produced less than expected from calculations. This is normally what occurs because in a perfect world, not everything will line up exactly, and there's always room or margin for error. The other side, if the yield is greater than 100%, this means that there is contamination or mismeasurements in the lab. This also can occur if we are not using tools that are very precise or accurate. We can actually get above 100% because our calculations were off or our measurements were off in the very beginning. Rarely is the error due to our calculations from our limiting reaction equation. So what is the equation? So our equation for percent yield is known as actual, so what we get in the lab, divided by theoretical, which this is just a fancy word for saying calculated, using stoichiometry. And of course, this will give us a decimal, so then we need to multiply this by 100, and the percent is a unit, so make sure not to calculate that. Press that in your calculator. So going back to our original problem, we had determined that we received either 12.71 grams of NaCl or 26.09 grams of NaCl. Since we ran out of sodium first, this is the maximum amount of product. This is what we know as our theoretical. This is because this is what we actually calculated in our paperwork and not what we actually performed in the lab. So what is the percent yield if 12.0 grams of NaCl were actually produced? So we can already know that our value should be less than 100 because this number is smaller than 12.71. So using our equation for percent yield, we will go ahead and take our 12.0 grams divided by our theoretical value. We calculated to be 12.71 grams, and solve that and multiply it by 100%. So when we take 12 and we divide that by 12.71, we get 0.9441 times 100%. We can also just move our decimal over 2 spots. And so this means that our percent yield was 94.41%. This is fairly good. We usually want to target for about 5% or higher.